Hey there, everybody. My job for this episode is to just introduce the webinar that we had with Brandon Smith back in September. Brandon Smith is the Director of Math Innovation and lead mathematician at Mind Education, where he creates some really impressive high impact learning programs for humanity. It's not just for students, it's for people of all ages. And over the past several years, he's focused on developing innovative projects to kind of close what he calls as the experience gap, this gap that exists, but not because students can't do it. It's because we've never even given them the opportunity to experience the kind of math that they can do. And so this podcast, this webinar was a blast to have Brandon. He just truly brought the joy into the virtual room. So let's just get right started. Brandon, I'm going to stop sharing and let you take it over for the next whatever number of minutes you want. Although typically we end by 5. There you go.
All right, great. All right, here we go. I'm going to hop in, get my slideshow up.
Perfect.
See it full screen. It looks great. Wonderful.
Nail it. Yep.
Wonderful. Step 1 is officially done. Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to hang out and chat about this. This is something that has been really top of mind for me in many ways, something that I'm really excited with because it really came around when we were really looking for ways to boost engagement. The common question we would all, typically want to ask would be something like, how do we get kids to like math? I'm sure we've all asked it, heard somebody ask it, try to come up with answers to it. And it wasn't, the question itself wasn't quite fitting right. Because the answers to the question that I was coming up with, and the ones that we've probably all come up with, like, well, we would like to make it easy so that kids would like it. And the problem I ran into with those is that a lot of times learning is very difficult. And so we're not going to necessarily tackle math anxiety when I do the easy stuff. So for example, I don't understand snakes at all. I don't get it. Worms above ground. What is happening? It's just not my thing at all. I can see one in a textbook or see a fun image of a playful one or a stuffed animal version of a snake, but none of that's going to really induce any sort of anxiety I might have about it because it's too easy. I'm not really truly engaging with it. Or we would say things like, well, we want to show how useful math is, which is true. And it's a great question if a kid is truly curious to want to see when they're going to use it. But it felt like so often kids are really offering an indictment of the experience. They're saying, do I really have to experience this content in exactly this way? They're not necessarily asking purely out of curiosity for future usefulness. They're saying, is this experience really necessary? And when we answered the question of like, yes, because it's useful, it didn't answer it in quite the level of immediacy. So let me give you a little bit more background for this. We're going to make this case for why joy versus liking. What's the difference? Why is this so powerful? I'm just going to go through a couple of ideas and type into the chat, ask questions. I'm going to do as best I can to check things out in the chat. We'll have a game that we can play. So on your computers or on your phone, if you would like. So here's really why the liking math or the fun isn't quite as strong. Because I can really like a comedy. I can really like watching someone play football. But you ask me to go on stage and tell a joke, it might terrify the bejesus out of me. I can love watching a play, but I don't want to be the actor. It's when I take action that my anxiety is going to bubble up. And so when we're talking about joy, I'm talking about that deeper rooted feeling that comes from really engaging with math. We know, we've probably all felt this, that anxiety is really not great. The more anxiety you have, the more you're going to struggle to learn. It releases cortisol in the brain. It really blocks a lot of the primary learning systems. And high anxiety holds our current capability back by about a year. This is crazy. High anxiety means that if you are a person, when you're engaging with math and you are highly anxious, you're basically performing a year behind what you are, your current capacity, which means your further capacity and all that gets stunted. So high achievers actually tend to exhibit more anxiety. So the students that we might want to typically label in that way oftentimes become very anxious because we just rush them through the concepts and the content. Girls have a tendency to exhibit more anxiety than our male students. And there was also some really fascinating research out, this blows my mind, that if you control for anxiety, there really isn't any sort of gender gap. And so there's so much that we are missing out on without really having that conversation around anxiety, or the antithesis of that would be joy. All right, so here's a question. Anxiety is obviously going to not be great for learning. If we've all experienced anxiety, we know it's not a good thing. Does that inherently mean then that we should go for a positive emotion? That if anxiety is bad, positive emotions are inherently good. You can type, if your screen is off, you can definitely answer whatever you want and then claim afterwards, like, I knew it, because you got it. So thumbs up is like, yeah, I think having a positive emotion is probably the way to go here. Thumbs down, not so convinced. You don't know me, so I will allow this. This is one time only, Duane. If you're like, I think Brandon is a bit of a trickster, I kind of will allow the double answer here. Oh, Duane. That was Duane typing it into the chat. So that's a really clever point. A little bit of anxiety. I would say a little bit of that curious urgency, like I'm playing a basketball game. It's like, I got to focus right now in order to get this done. If that turns into full-fledged anxiety, you'll probably shut down, for example, as a basketball player. But if it stays in that realm of like, I still think I can do this, and you feel empowered to overcome the hurdle, that curious urgency, then it's great. That little balance is kind of a fun bit. Okay, so if anxiety is bad, it is actually kind of one of these issues where it kind of depends. So one of the reasons anxiety is bad is that it's a pacifying emotion. It's an emotion that gets me to avoid the object of my anxiety. So math anxiety means I'm going to do as little as possible. I'm going to stay away as far as I can. Positive emotions can also be pacifying. I don't know about you, but I start watching TV or something at night, and man, the dishes just do not seem to find their way to the dishwasher. I am in such a relaxed or comfortable state, I'm also not taking action. The other reason this depends is, yes, you were correct no matter what. I had to throw that one in there, Duane. It also depends on how I get those emotions. So this is a really big deal. So let me give you an example. This is probably going to sound familiar for you. We were really trying to figure out how to crack the code on community engagement. So we started going to family math nights. We started hosting our own family math nights. And we did this very common bit. You'd have a bunch of different stations set up. Each one would get like a stamp for a passport. You would finish the passport, maybe turn in a survey. And then, I don't know, you're entered into a raffle. Does this sound familiar to folks? I went to one, and the raffle, this blew my mind. There was a bicycle on the stage. It was incredible. I was like, what happened here? If you were to take photos on Instagram when kids walked into the room, I mean, their eyes lit up, right? Positive emotion. There's these booths and these tables for me to go through. There's math. So I have a positive emotion, and math happens to be sitting in the room. And the problem is the positive emotion had nothing to do with the mathematics. So in fact, the positive emotion could happen while I was still very mathematically anxious. And so the issue that we were running into as we saw that, we were like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And it's because if we try to coerce anything, we try to coerce students or convince them to engage with the math, it basically takes away all of the outcomes that we would want to see. You're not going to get the creative thinking, the conceptual or the flexible thinking. If you are been following the new California frameworks, it's pretty important that we have creative, conceptual, and flexible thinking. It's not just about doing rote stuff. In other words, if you try to coerce me into doing something mathematical, I'm probably going to do just the bare minimum to get you to stop coercing. Or in this case of the family math night, everybody did this. They walked up with their passport and said, "Can you stamp my passport?" They didn't say, "Oh, what math are we doing?" It was like, "Can I get the stamp?" It was so external that there was a guy, I'm not kidding, this blows my mind, sitting at the survey booth where you would be entered into the raffle. And he would look at the survey and look at the raffle and go, "Nope, you have to go back and do more math." Because everybody was trying to skirt the system. It had detrimental effects on exactly the kind of outcomes we want. But this is the opposite of joy. So this blows my mind too. Humans want to do hard things because it makes us feel powerful. As soon as kids learn to tie their shoes, they want to keep doing it. They want to be helpful. You give me a video game that becomes too easy, I become bored. And the research is basically saying that the best moments, the moments of the highest joy in your life, is when you stretched your body or mind to its limits. In an uncoerced, you weren't forced to do it in the traditional external motivating factor to do something really hard. So to me, this is giving us really the blueprint for where mathematical joy comes from. I can't experience mathematical joy just because I'm being entertained. Why? Because I'm not doing anything. I can passively absorb it, and it's fun and it's enjoyable, and there's nothing wrong with a good time, but it doesn't become one of the best moments. To really experience joy, I have to struggle, I have to overcome it, and I can't be coerced as I do. And this is the way I really think about this is for many of us, I think we feel this tug of war between effort and play. So what I mean is like, well, I really want my kids to have fun. Cool. And we oftentimes like, I don't know, we do something like create a fun acronym for PEMDAS or whatever. I don't know, a kid comes up with pink elephants, mostly do annoying stuff, and they color it in, and it's playful, but there's no mathematical effort. And then we give them a worksheet because that's the effort. So we gave them play. We tugged the rope over to play for a while, then we let the rope go, and somebody else is tugging the rope over to effort. And there's this sense of battle. And really, to experience joy is rather than this tug of war between the two, you want to marry the two. You want them to become so intertwined that I almost can't tease them apart. So to me, like just from a sense of really where's this feel is I think when we want kids to like math, we tend to use this tug of war between effort and play and sometimes go too far towards effortlessness. And what I'm saying is no, amp it up, amp down the pressure or the forcefulness or the coercion, so to speak. All right, so I want to give us an example. Duane, this was your cue if you want to look up Hesperia. I have a game that we're going to play. I'm going to have to get out of full screen mode here in a second. So if you want to type this in, I can also I'll type I should have copied it, but I'll just type the link in here.
I'll do it. I got you covered, Brandon.
I beat you.
Oh, dang.
Well, let's hope I typed it right. So I may have, I'm just kidding. You can use the QR code if you'd like to use your phone to try that. Just rotate it sideways. It works better in landscape mode. Or you can type the bit.ly link into the chat. Not going to explain a ton of how to do it. Duane was better because it's now a link that you can click. There's going to be some coins on the left, and you've got to drag them into the turtle shell and simultaneously hit all of those sums all the way around. So you can see the example on the screen where 1 + 2 is equal to 3. So going to just give us a minute or so just to experience, to get a feel for it, because this is really going to ground sort of 3 components of how effort and play marry together. And then we're going to do some other examples as well. So give us just a minute to get up and running. I'm going to switch my screen, and then we'll just talk through a couple of the puzzles. The turtle sums gave it away, someone says in the chat. All right, so let's get out of the full screen mode here. Going to go right into this game. All right, so it's a lot of fun to do this in person. We even have physical versions where we printed off turtles with wood. It's a ton of fun. Okay, great. So I want to solve this puzzle. The goal of the game is to match all of the sums. So as an adult, I don't think it's ultra crazy to know that the 4 has to go here. We just don't have a whole lot of options. It's the only way for 1 and 4 to make 5, and it makes me very happy that 4 and 2 make 6. And the way that this one is designed is for kids and their parents to play together, so it doesn't just move on right away. So if a kid wants to check their work and now they get to celebrate it and they run around with their iPad like, Mom and Dad, look. So we leave on this until you click next to move to the next puzzle. But I'm going to use this drop-down menu. I'm going to go to the mode. All of these modes are different versions of the game, and they mean turtle in different languages. And there's a connection, a real-world connection as to why. I'm just going to go to puzzle 3. Check this one out. If I were just looking at normal math standards and I'm just dealing with add-ins within 4. I mean, I'm dealing with kindergarten, first grade, the symbolic fluency standards, which can feel easy. It's like, oh, well, we just got to do this thing. But let's go through the reasoning. Like, this is nuts for just 1 second. First of all, what every kid on the planet wants to do, this is like the favorite thing. They love the number 5. 2 and 3 tends to be like the number 1 fact. And then 1 and 4. Smaller numbers are cooler on the left, apparently, in that strategy. And now your rows match, but your columns are just all over the place. Life is just like, oh my goodness, what is happening here? Maybe I try and swap the 1 and the 4. Kids wouldn't just jump to puzzle 3. I'm doing this for our sake, just for the sake of example. And I like to look for the smallest number because it matches my maturity level, really. That's the ultimate reason. Also, the fact that there's going to be fewer options. And what I mean by that is if I just look first at the number 3, 4 cannot touch these diagonals. There's just not a chance. There's no chance that 4 can go here or here. 3 can't do it either. The only options would be 2 and 1. This is cool. But the commutative property, I know that I could also make this 1 and 2. It's just a matter of how all these other sums are going to arrange. But it has to be 2 and 1 or 1 and 2. We have no other options. And in this case, 2 can't possibly work because if the 2 was up there, I have no room down here. So we kind of got this inherently now that it'd have to go this way. I saw a kid do this because this is not my normal way to do it, but I just love so many different open solutions to this. The kid went like this. Well, if 4 can't go here because of 3, it also can't go right here because of the vertical column. I can't put a 4 to add to 4. 4 has to go here. It wasn't like it's 2 and 1 or 1 and 2. She was able to go, no, 4 has to be in that spot. And I was like, this is freaking genius. What a clever approach. Now you can keep hitting next. For the sake of time, I'm not going to. I'm going to jump ahead to low shoe. And I'm going to go to the last puzzle, which I love to call Holy Moly. If that's your first reaction of how do I solve this, then wonderful. Imagine you've been playing all the puzzles up. We now know that we can solve this without having to guess. There's always a strategy here. If you've taught high school, maybe you've done this in a way where you had formulas and all that sort of stuff, but you don't have to necessarily do that, although you can, because the exact same thinking we just did in puzzle 3, we can do again. Let me give you an example. This middle location is the linchpin of everything because every other location on the turtle has to communicate with it. There's no way around it. Every other location, diagonal, vertically, horizontal, has to talk with this 9. But if 9 is there, there is no room for 8 to go anywhere. So 9 and 8 obviously can't go into the middle. 7 can't go into the middle because where does the 9 go? 6 can't go into the middle because, again, where does the 9 go? I don't have any zeros to play with. So the big numbers have a problem. The small numbers are going to suffer the same fate. Where does the 2 go? So we can think our way through this, and we have no choice but to have to put the 5 in. It's the only number that's going to even have any chance at all. And so now this is really cool. Look what you're left with on the left. Your partners to 10. So we're talking about things that might be kindergarten, first grade, second grade kinds of standards, symbolic partners to 10, but put together in this really cool progression that kids super hook. So if you have done like Kern Math Week, the CMC Central Math Week, Region 10, so Hesperia was a part of Region 10, San Bernardino, Riverside. The way we do this for families, if you click on the books, I'll give you a little sneak peek. It actually tells you the entire backstory. It's based on a true story out of China. So you're getting this literacy, cultural relevance, explains to you why there's a turtle. And it also does a connection to the real world as to why the modes of this game mean turtle in all of the different languages. Now, here's why this is really important, because I'm going to show you a couple of what I like to call Brandon's brilliant blunders. And I said it right. Oh man, that's a tongue twist. You can't tell you how many times I've tried to say that. It's like, okay. So tell me, Duane, or those in the chat, do you just read this as a puzzle? This is an actual puzzle that I tried before turtle sums exist. Does this just exude tons of mathematics? Use the numbers each exactly once so that all the sums match. Before you move on, remember, you must check your work. Is this just exuding mathematical joy or what? Because I'll tell you, when I ran this at first, anyone want to guess? This flopped bad. Kids would just do 1, 2, 3, 4. Why would I say must check your work? Well, because no kid ever actually checked their work. They were just filling in numbers, moving on. I wasn't accomplishing that mathematical engagement, that uncoerced struggle to accomplish something, which is the seed for joy. I wasn't getting any of that to happen. And so, okay, you're going to love this. Brandon's brilliant blunder number 2. I'm not kidding. This is exactly what I tried. Okay, look at this. Huh? Did we solve this? Or I'm not kidding. This is what I did. We have just solved it. I mean, we are done. You've probably seen textbooks and things take this kind of approach. Why did this completely and utterly bomb? Because the marriage of effort and playfulness has to be a mathematical union. Mathematical effort and mathematical playfulness. There's nothing wrong with graphics on the screen, but I didn't get rid of any of the authoritative tone or that pressure. You can feel that in order for this to be effortful, I was trying to increase the pressure and the rigor, and then I was trying to convince you that I wasn't being so pressure-filled. I was tug-of-warring between effort and playfulness. I wasn't marrying the two. This tanks terribly. So if you read the storybook, here's how we solved that. We wrote it as a storybook first, not digital. And what we wanted to do is we wanted kids to really do that deep thinking that if I go 2, 3, 4, 1, like a kid would do to make 5, I don't just move on and I'm done. So we said numbers out of place make turtle shells itch. Switch to numbers to help. Oh my goodness. This little bit solved so much, because what am I telling you? Check your work. But I'm doing this in this very empathetic, sort of playful way. And here's what happened. If you look really close, we've got these turtle shells where the numbers you're supposed to use, 1, 2, 3, the 4 is dark green and blacked out. They're hexagons, but yet the holes in the turtle shell are circles, and the pieces you're playing with are circles. Don't ever put this, don't take a screenshot, because I don't want this to be on and around the internet in case I ever need to, clean up my resume. This is just terrible. I mean, the level of graphics here is horrible. But this was at the New England Aquarium. Right behind these kids was a penguin exhibit, the entrance to the aquarium. They only, in this field trip, they only had 1 hour to tour the aquarium, and they spent 45 minutes on just this game. With the graphics, horrible. You can see the storybook in the background, and it wasn't even the cleaned up version that you can get digitally. So this really started to unlock quite a few things around what it takes for joy to happen. If you notice, on this bottom image here, there is 0 of the ferns. The graphics don't even match up quite right, but kids didn't care. Why? Because when you married effort and play, you feel powerful, and powerful is enjoyable. And mathematics needs more opportunities for kids to feel powerful, but they can't do it when they're passive, and they can't do it when we are being over the top heavy-handed. So there's really three components that this unlocked, and we're going to do a couple more examples into some other grades for mathematical joy. The first one is have a much more casual, playful tone. We have a tendency to get kids to want to put forth effort by amping up the academic pressure or the rubric, the forcefulness. And if you just let some of that control go, just like numbers out of, and by the way, turtle shells really do itch. This blows my mind. It's true. So I didn't make it up that turtle shells itched. I was like, this has to be a real reason. But that unauthoritative tone, what it means is we're not trying here to just move you for further accomplishment. The moment right now is where the joy is going to happen. The experience right now, not just what happens in the future. The other is offering a progression of questions allows us to not have to explain all the rules up front. So like on the turtle sums game, you saw a progression. It's like, oh, I dragged 2 cards. Oh, now I drag 3. Oh, now all 4 are open. That progression, what it does is it's so enticing because you earned the prior wins. The dopamine in your brain fires off and goes, I want to do that again. That's joy. I want to do a similar task again, and I want to up my game. So at a family math night, when we have 10 disconnected questions, if I solve something and I get excited, I have no ability to put that new skill to use. If I build a skill, I build a schema, I want to put it to use. And I don't have to put it to use just in real world problems. I want to put it to use to something similar. A progression is so powerful to make this happen. And the last is instant agency. And what I mean by that is, and the number one symptom of anxiety is avoidance behavior because it's a pacifying state of mind. So go back to this fan math night example with the passport raffle. What do you think the parents did? We had a facilitator at the table. The facilitator's doing all the heavy lifting. We've all been there. What does a parent do? They back up and they go on their phone like this. And then the facilitator tries to go, come and engage. I'm like, no, there's not enough space. I'll let my daughter do it. And they, what are they actually saying? What they're saying is, I'm not touching the freaking snake. There is no chance that you were going to get me to touch this thing. I will stand here with snakes in the room, but I'm not going to do any heavy lifting. The more that we try to explain or get people into the door, with us doing all the work where they get to sing passive for a while, kind of like the I do, we do, you do model. If I stay too passive for too long, I'm never going to kick into gear. My anxiety has so much room to roost. And you end up making me feel as though I wasn't capable. So here's another example. I was learning to golf. I'm terrible at it. I almost threw my shoulder out trying to swing. I thought I was going to swing it like it was a baseball. Turns out it doesn't work that way. And so for my grandfather's memorial, he used to build clubs just for himself. And we all have a set of them. So I was going with my brother, my dad, and I can't hit the ball 10 feet in front of me with a driver. Why? I don't know. It just, for whatever reason, it's not a thing. So what happened before they gave me the club? Well, first of all, they stood back and put their helmets on. But after that, they started telling me all the things to do. Now put your foot here. No, don't swing it. Don't swing. All I wanted to do was just give me a couple at bats here. Let me have some agency. Let me do something. And what would happen is every time I swung, they would stop. They would explain for 3 or 4. You know, you ever had that? Like 4 or 5 minutes. You're like, oh my God, you obviously do not trust me. And it is such a weakening state to feel like you're in. But instant agency means I did not avoid the object. I actually engaged and more deeply. So if you put these 3 together, in many ways, you get the opposite of anxiety or mathematical joy. All right, shall we do another example? All right, let's do this. All right. So I'm going to start with just an empty square, and we're going to fill this up halfway. This kindergarten, first grade, kids can get a feel that this is half. Maybe you fold it over, maybe you cut them and lay them on top of each other. But you build this idea that shaded and unshaded makes a half. And if I rotate it, it's a square, not that big. Do the same thing, cut it, or just rotate the square in my mind. How about this? I'm talking about kindergarten, first grade kids. We might look at like, well, the formula for the area, about 15% of high school kids in Algebra 1 know what the formula for the area of a triangle is anyway. So that means 85% of our high schoolers would not be able to tackle this problem in that way. But it's the same. Cut it out. You can lay them on top of it. I can fold this like a sandwich. I'm basically just cutting the way kids have their ham and cheese or peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm just cutting it in half. But here's how the progression goes. You got to imagine as a kid, you're asking these kids to solve these. I'm going to really bring this in just for time. What if I do weird stuff? Like I take this top corner and I just start dragging it around. I don't know the formula for the area of a triangle. I'm talking about a progression of thinking that our elementary school kids can have access to, and the agency to be like, I'm not going to tell you how to do this. I want to know if by dragging this, do we ever make this bigger or smaller? What actually happens here? And you let the kid sit in that struggle and figure it out before you give them the tips or tricks or the method for how to solve it. Have them play with an idea and struggle, because they're gonna naturally want to connect to prior ideas. So in a case like this, just as an example, I can look at the left side as corner to corner, which I already know makes a half. I can look at the right side. I know corner to corner always makes a half. So the shaded and the unshaded have to be the same. No formula in the sense of 1/2 base times height. I'm literally just playing with this idea. Let me give you another step in the progression. I'm sure we've not seen this one. Are you ready for something really weird? All right, let's imagine this dot is a free form dot. Doesn't just slide back and forth. We can pull this down. What happens to the area if I just pulled this thing all over the place, wherever I want to go? Where would I get the most area? Or another way to say it is, do I ever get smaller than a half or bigger? And when exactly would that happen? This is very difficult, but yet because of the progression, kids will feel the power that they're capable of taking a puzzle on like this, because I'm not saying you can't solve this until I give you the formula, and I don't treat it as a one-off thing. Math is so highly connected, kids get to put their thinking to use. I'm sure some of you have put your thinking caps on. And once we talk through it, you can now say, I knew it, because I can't see your face to know the difference. This is not my solution. I was doing this with an elementary teacher. She was a little nervous about math, actually. The typical, we've all felt that. We all feel that sense of math anxiety. Like, I don't know if I want to raise my hand in math class or at a math conference. Do not ever point at me when I'm in the audience at a math, that feeling. I gave them the task, and they're just doing it on paper and pencil. You can try it right now. Just draw out a square, put a dot, figure out where you want to try it. And this was not my strategy to do it, but this was hers. And she just drew this. And I was like, oh my God, this is so smart. And she didn't even catch how incredibly genius this was. And I asked her, I was like, would you like to share this with everyone? She's like, I said, can I share it? Yes. So now I share it all the time. Did not want to be named. But if you look at these 4 quadrants, what is it? Corner to corner, corner to corner. You just draw a little cross right there, and you get 4 corner to corners. And if corner to corner is a half, then we're done. Like, how cool is this? I can put a dot anywhere I want inside of a square, shade in the connections, and it's 1/2 every single time. In fact, when I first was uncovering this, I was trying to break it. I was like, there's no way this can be a half no matter what. No, there's not a snowball's chance. But it works. It's a half no matter what every single time. You're not going to get a question like this in the standards. However, if you're thinking about progression, it's just what is the something else I can tackle and go for it. So here's another example. Anybody know offhand what the formula for the area of a kite is? I'm actually hoping that you all say no, because it doesn't really matter for this purpose. Kids will think that when I see a kite, I've got to learn a brand new formula because the top 2 are supposed to be the same, the bottom 2 are supposed to be the same, and there's all the rules about it. And I'm like, phooey with all that. think about a progression, being able to have autonomy, and just messing with simple ideas with agency. See, if I teach you the formula first, you have no agency. You have mimicry, but I'm talking about the actual ability to take a puzzle like this and go, what could I possibly do about this? And we actually did this on the very first slide. I can rotate stuff and who cares? So a kite is always half its box, even if the lines aren't nice. We're literally just doing two ideas. Shaded and unshaded is a half, and corner to corner is an example of that. That's it. That's all we've used this whole time. And we can take kids on this longitudinal cross grade level progression. Imagine if all of math learning was much more like this. California frameworks would call this kind of thinking big ideas, right? Where you're building progressions and understanding. And it's so enjoyable when you're like, oh, those eureka moments where that sense of discovery is earned. You can't get that in a one-off thing where I have no agency, but a progression where I can connect to prior ideas, I can. All right, I'm going to push this once more. Let's forget about that for now. All right, how about if I have, like a box and I have a triangular prism in it? How much of the box does that take up? Now we're talking about volume, middle school. How much of this box does the triangular prism take up? I don't have any numbers or anything like that for us to actually calculate. We're just going to build the progression based on the ideas before. And that is, if I got rid of the whole box and I just paid attention to this front face, it's a half. We did that even before the wonky kite example and pulling the dot down. And think of this as like the old time films where they actually had to put all the slides in there and just go half, 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 half. I'm just, and every single slice that I look at, just half all the way up. If half of each thing, this has to be one half. This would be basically the formula that you have in towards middle school, where volume is the area of the base times the height. And if the area of the base is half of the other thing, what we're doing all of that through being able to just think and reason with a bit more of a level playing field. Now, I'm going through this so fast. I understand that it's a little different than the turtle sums, just because this I'm trying to animate out as we go. But that's what I'm getting at when I talk about this. We don't need heavy language. I don't have to sit there and say, well, the formula is this, and you better get all the numbers right. And no, capital B means the area of the base, not the length of. I don't do any of that. You just provide a progression in which I have the opportunity to do something and to fidget around and to mess up and to learn from it. And that will be empowering, because that is the healthy release of dopamine, is when I've earned a win on the result of hard effort. That's exactly what the original research article was saying. All right, we should do one more. You guys ready for one more? It won't always be a half this time. We got to change it up. All right, you've got 4 boxes. And the goal of this is to just make a square. I'm sure we can all see it. You give kids sticky notes, give them 3x5 cards and cut them into squares, give them all kinds of stuff. They're just going to do something like this. Got it. Nailed it. All right, let's level up here. How about now with 9 blocks? If you gave the kid 9 more, they might even start with the initial square and they'll put these 2 in. And then I don't know what to do in the corner. That probably doesn't work. So I'll fill them along the sides first. Like, oh, look, great. The corner works. And they can make these. You could do this with 16 and 25. This is 3rd grade, right? 3rd grade, 4th grade, you're really learning your math facts, the properties of square numbers. It's if I can make a square out of it. If I can make an interesting rectangle, it's composite. If I can only make a long rectangle, it's prime. All of that sort of exploration. So you can imagine all of that was happening. You're living in that for a while. Okay. And I've also learned about fractions, and that's all I have in 3rd and 4th, let's say through 5th grade. And now I want to give you something crazy wonky. You've got 5, and we have still got to do whatever we can to make a square. It doesn't have to be perfect, but close enough to be a square. The first 4 are easy. The question is, what do we do with this 5th box to help turn this thing into a square in a way that we can describe it? Does that feel tricky? Typically, we wouldn't ever have an experience like this. Ooh, Cole says 4ths Duane said, can we cut it? So Cole's answer to that would be yes, and he gave a way to do it. So check this action out. I'm going to do that. I'm just going to do what Cole said. All right, so cut this box here into 4 pieces, throw 2 along the top, and throw 2 along the bottom. Not perfect. I'm missing a little bit of that square, but it's pretty good. Check this out. Try this in your calculator. Do 2.25 squared. You are basically going to get 5. Or do the square root of 5. It'll be very close to 2.25. Why? Because there's only a tiny little bit of red error there. This is an example where we've just taken pretty early ideas through middle school. And before we're even teaching you the formal notation in middle school for square roots and the rules of, like, if I have the square root of 5 plus the square root of 2, can the 5 and 2 go together? Can they go together if I multiply? All of those, just take all the formality out and just play with an idea with agency. All right, shall we try this? How about this? The square root basically is what I'm asking. Close enough-ish. How do I turn 10 blocks into a close-ish square? The first 9 are easy. But what do we do with that last block to make this close-ish to a square? Well, instead of having 2 by 2, I just have 3 across and 3 down. So I would need to cut this into 6 pieces. And when I do that and I distribute these out, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close to make. And I'll try this. Do the square root of 10, and you will get something very close to 3.16666666666. I'll put those 7 in there now. Close. Or do 3.167 and hit the times itself button, and you will get a number very, very close to 10. This isn't the power of creating these progressions that give kids agency with what they know now, not saying I have to introduce all the stuff about square roots before you can get started. You're allowing me to be passive. You're not allowing the joy to really shine. And what I'm saying is, look at these progressions as we go, give kids agency early on, and a lot of really cool stuff can happen. All right, let's try one more here just for fun. If I have 625 blocks, I can turn this into a 25 by 25. Do you like how I didn't actually draw them? Yeah. That was going to take way too long. Even with copy and paste and doubling and all that, I didn't want to do it. But what if I have 626 blocks? So imagine what I'm effectively asking is, what is the square root of 626-ish? What is ish the square root? My guess is currently most Algebra 2 calculus kids aren't going to be able to come up with a decent answer other than maybe guessing their way through it. But we can get this pretty good to a couple decimal places because I've got to go 25 across and 25 down. It's not perfect, but it'll be close. And 50, 1 out of 50 is the same as 2 out of 100. So try 25.02, square it, and you are going to get really stinking close to 626. These types of experiences become incredibly joy-inducing. Why? Because the progression allows you to struggle, allows you to figure it out, and now allows you to put to use. So part of probably what was fun for those watching in is when I asked 10, you went, oh, I think I can do this now. Or 626, oh, I think I can do this now. That's empowering. That's a place of taking action. That's a place of mathematical joy. It's not just about trying to make math fun. It's about doing whatever we can to put kids into situations where out the gate, they can get started, they can get up and running. We're not trying to explain a bunch of one-off individual things where I got to sit and wait and learn everything in order to get started. I can take this friendly tone and friendly experience and take you through a sequence of these where you stay in the driver's seat. Now, this is just 3 components. This isn't necessarily everything you could possibly do, but I would say these are probably some of the really big bang for the bucks. And if you have read through the California standards, the new frameworks, if not, definitely start with the first couple of chapters and then and work your way through. It basically is calling out these kinds of things, but in different terminology. And this is part of what gets me really excited for this time in math education, especially in the state, is we've spent years trying to figure out how do we pull these things off for kids? Coming up with ideas like these three, figuring out how to put them to use. And the frameworks are saying that's actually an expectation industry-wide. Now, it's going to be a rough rollout. Every time there's change, there's going to be something. What I get excited about is imagine if we could put experiences like this to use that actually lower anxiety, give kids agency, and as a result, joy and learning. Imagine what math education could look like in 2035. Could you imagine? We could be 10 years from now. I would have the same hair. I mean, this is amazing. I wouldn't even look that much older. Neither would Duane. I would have the same hairline. I wouldn't even be going bald. And we could look back and say, there's no way I would want to go back to the math classroom in 2025. Think of it like surgery. Would you want to go back 10 or 15 years for whatever operation you're going to have? No, nope. I do not want to go. But right now in math education, really, what's the difference if I go back 20, 40, 50, 100 years? There's not that much. The frameworks are now going to force, I think, content providers to really step up to the plate and say, you need to start offering things that are really going to be worth the teacher's time. Stop giving them sugar pills and hoping for them to cure everything with a bottle of medicine that's the placebo. We keep providing these placebo solutions. And I think we're on the precipice now. If we can keep moving in this direction, we can look back in 10 years and be like, nope, I do not want to go back to that. The ultimate sort of punchline with something like this is we can either spend a lot of our time and effort trying to make math fun, as if the onus is on us, as if we have to sugarcoat the medicine, as if we have to take the learning out of it. We end up tug of warring between play and effort when we do that. And what I'm saying is the more that we can marry the two, joy is something that we bring to the table ourselves. I can't force it. I can't coerce it. I can either try to make math fun, or I can have kids bring their own joy and create their own positive experience to the table. And that's really where a lot of this change in view comes, where unlocking mathematical joy isn't quite what we might have thought it was just based on looking at the title of the session. So that's it. That's where we're at here. We got 5 minutes ahead of schedule, Duane. I want to put that on the record. Okay, just for notes, 5 minutes ahead of the top of the hour.
You nailed it. Hey, so folks, if you want to throw in a question for Brandon, go ahead and put it in the webinar. We'll give, put it in the chat box thingy thing. We'll give a couple of seconds before I do the closing slide or two.
So Sarah asks a really poignant question. We talk a lot about low floor, high ceiling. A progression is a way to create it by way of a level playing field, because we all started with the floor, like we just got 4 blocks. I got to make a square. That's something that's approachable to us, and you can level your way through. And the high ceiling comes out as a result of that progression going further and further, like the turtle sums task. Go to the very last puzzle. Go to Kame. It means in Japanese. It's my favorite language. Is what I studied in high school. And go to the very last puzzle. I mean, it is off the charts, crazy hard, really, really challenging to solve. The progression to me is in many ways the joyful way to create the low floor, high ceiling. Oh, the patents. What are those patents for? A lot of this is we created a lot of physical and digital manipulatives for like this idea of like perfect squares-ish kind of thing. So we created some manipulatives to show exactly how and why a parabola works, and when is it a parabola versus a catenary curve, and also for our approach to leveling. So prior to doing a lot of this family community outreach stuff, I was working on our ST math program and was able to find our co-founder even said he's raised the bar on how we create these progressions. So much so that there was a lot of patented stuff in there that we can leverage, which is really kind of fun. So Sarah, I love that question. We do want low floor, high ceiling, but not necessarily just within one task. That's okay. But if I only gave you one of those square questions, like the square root of 5, you'd be like, well, that's a trick. Right? A one-off question doesn't feel like a connected learning experience that I can experience joy when the connection happens. One-off questions become one-off tricks. That's why at a family math night, 10 separate stations will typically be less joyful than a station with a progression of 10 puzzles, because I feel powerful and capable the whole time. We want to think, oh, I got to find the math that just catches your eye, and that when you're interested, then somehow you're going to want to do the worksheet that's at the family math night. And the answer is 0 kids will want to do that. But you create a progression here, like that turtle sums example, and you find in many ways across the board, people will play it, they will get into it, kids will get, because of that progression sort of feel. And if anyone's in the Region 10 area, so they've done their 3rd math week now, found some pretty exciting breakthroughs in advertising, and they went past the 2 million minutes mark for Region 10. So that's Inyo, Mono, Riverside, and San Bernardino. So that's incredible. Do we have more progression activities? Here, I'll type my B Smith at, and should have put it on a slide. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. You can reach out and I can send you some stuff. I actually been working on some for a progression to help visualize integrals. We even have one related to the fact that a triangle is half of its box and a pyramid is a third of its box in 3D. There's a pinching that happens. So if I pinch one dimension out of something, like a box becomes a triangle, it's a half. Or a 3D box becomes a triangular pyramid. I'm pinching one dimension, so to speak, out of the top of it. If you pinch a second dimension, it's a third. If you pinched a third dimension, we're talking about higher dimensions now, it's a fourth every time.
Wow.
And it's also the exact same scheme as to why the integral from 0 to 1 of x is a half, x squared is a third, because it's actually multiple one-dimensional pinches, but you're pulling the same amount of information out of the equation, so to speak, as before. So if you ever did the integral of x is x 1/2 x squared, and you plug in the 1 and the 0, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. On that interval from 0 to 1, it's just a box. And I'm literally, x is just the straight line. I'm pinching it over. And when I pinch that straight line again, it does all the parabolic and cubic curves and all that sort of stuff. That level of mathematical progression, if we could really get that across the board with a student curriculum from kinder and up, like I said, I think it's going to take 5 to 10 years to really fully realize exactly what's all happening in the frameworks. It just makes me really excited for the state of math education. And hopefully the same is true for everybody on the call.
I love it. I love it. Part of you just blew my mind at the very end with the pinching and the idea of part and parcel of understanding and these progressions is when some sort of visual representation goes along with that progression, so we can see what's going on. That is not in a lot of curricula. A lot of curricula is just numbers, naked numbers. Kind of like
it's one of the ways to pull those 3 components off. If it's visual, I don't have to give you any words at all. So it's totally unauthoritative. It feels like a game. Yeah. I'm inherently going to give you a progression because you're going to have to figure it out yourself. And it's a game. So you're going to have to do all the work from the beginning. Visual thinking, the power of thinking in pictures, is another really palpable one that never goes away. Being able to, like, literally, I can imagine what the integral of x squared looks like, because I can pinch x squared and pull information out of it and get a third. And I'm not just pinching the top, I'm pinching the entire curve over. You can see it and feel it. And a rush to the symbols is in many ways a rush away from joy, because if we take those 3 components away, we're screwed.
Yeah, spot on. Brandon, I am so glad you came. Okay, hey, everybody, I want to, first off, in the chat box, put a big old thank you to Brandon. Just thank him. This was every bit what he was kind of touted to be. This was Brandon, thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day.